The great man has arrived in the studio. David, very good to see you. We'll let you settle down. Just
thanks, mate.
Shake hands with you.
I had to look around when you said great.
Very good to see you.
Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Simon. Nice to meet you.
David, there is so much obviously to talk about, and you know, the interesting thing is, even you and I. Sorry, you're in the wrong chair, aren't you? We've got to put you over there because we're going to get you over there. David and I used to work at the BBC together in the late 80s, and the unfortunate thing for him and the really good thing for me was, of course, you fell out with the BBC.
No, they fell out with me.
And I got your sports shifts. I got your snooker
apparently
shifts.
Saying the economic system is destroying the environment was incompatible with Ian Rush scored a hat-trick.
And that was that.
Yeah, I'm glad though. Glad it happened.
Well, how amazing. If it hadn't have happened, you could have been sitting here, and I'd have been unemployed.
Yeah, and I would have long taken the pill if I'd have continued in that industry.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say about that industry, because, you know, that's just one of the many things I want to talk to you about. That industry, that is the media, that is broadcast, and there are limitations to that. And you know what? The older I am and the longer I'm in this business, you've got regulatory bodies which say what you can't say and what you should do.
Don't start me.
How we control it. I do want to start you. I do want to start you, because I think whether you agree with this man or not, and I think you just have got to listen to what he says. You listen to what he says and then come away and judge for yourself after that. Right. So, media. What's broadcast? What's allowed to be broadcast?
Well, I've been writing in my books now for nearly 30 years that there is a plan to make Orwell's 1984 reality. We're seeing this, of course, with more and more control of people's privacy and the constant gathering of fine, detailed data of people's lives. But the key thing is this. What directs people's lives? What directs their opinions? What directs their behavior? Their perceptions. Their perceptions of themselves, their perceptions of the world, their perceptions of world events.
The way they're sold those events.
Yeah. Now, this is the point. Where do we get those perceptions from? We get them from information received. It might be a personal experience information, or it might be the 10 o'clock news, or it might be the Daily Mail, or something on Facebook. The point is, if you control the information that people receive, then you will, to a vast extent, dictate their perceptions, especially if you also censor, suppress, and marginalize other people giving another fix, another version of the same event or the same situation. Now, I've just come back literally a few days ago from America. I've been filming there, and particularly Silicon Valley. I call it the Devil's Playground. If you now look at that, what is, when you visit it, a very small area of America, never mind the world, you've got companies that Facebook, Google, etc., that are increasingly dominating the gathering of data of people's lives, B, because of the way they have so impacted upon the channels of communication, they dictate to such an increasing extent what people see and what people don't see.
Let me interrupt you there. I need to say something to you. Last night, I was on the phone at 11 o'clock at night to my elder brother, Leonard, right? And he attended your arena conference in Dublin recently.
I'm going back there on the 24th.
You 12 hours. He stands up there 10, 12 hours, and he does whatever he does. And we finished the conversation about you, and I said good night. And then suddenly there was a notification of 2 David Icke YouTube videos. And I thought, gosh, I didn't think my brother was very tech savvy. That was amazing. So I phoned him this morning. I said, thanks for those 2 video clips. They're very good. He said, I didn't send you 2 video clips. They weren't on my email. They weren't on my text messages. They weren't on WhatsApp. But these were, they dropped down on my phone. 2 YouTube suggestions about David Icke. Why did that happen?
It's very simple. I've come across many, many stories like this. In fact, to such an extent that Facebook has had to say, actually, we're not doing it on purpose, or it's just for advertising. They are actually listening to conversations. Obviously, you've not got a human being sitting there. Although if they're targeting someone, it's a human being. But the general population, it's algorithms. We're talking AI now. I mean, the possibilities of human manipulation of communication and the gathering of data now are limitless increasingly. And what happens is because many people have had conversations about, say, a product.
An aftershave, a concert ticket.
And then it comes up on Facebook, and they weren't even, thinking that they were talking to Facebook. These are private conversations.
Can I just ask you, what's wrong with that? So for some people listening
her husband's in this business.
Well, for some people, it's about convenience. It's about saving time. It's, that's exactly what I was looking for. I'll click onto it. So for some people...
So that's more important than having private conversations in your own home, then?
Well, for me, if I'm talking about a holiday and a holiday comes up...
Who else is listening to that conversation? And what else you say apart that is not a product?
But, I don't live my life looking at what-ifs.
No, you don't. No, you don't. And that's why you're a doddle to scam, and you're a doddle
But I've never been scammed.
How do you know that?
How do you know that?
But because I haven't... what's a scam?
If a product comes up and you buy it, you haven't been scammed.
Well, I made the choice to buy it.
You think you have.
Well,
it's been put in front of you. If it wasn't put in front of you, you might not have bought it.
There's lots of products that come up that I decide not to buy, and there are some that I decide to buy.
But no, say, Sarah, for instance, I'm planning a secret holiday with my secret girlfriend, and the message comes through, going to Hawaii, and my wife sees
Well, has that ever happened to you?
But it could...
Well, how many people has it happened to?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Don't judge the world by your own experience and your own opinions.
Call in. If that's happened to you, call in. I'd like to find out.
And the point being that... the control out of Silicon Valley of the information we receive, the data that's collected, and increasingly the nature of the AI that's running things, concentrates that power in such a small area and such a small number of hands. And if you want to have control by the few of the vast number, you have to centralize power, and that's what is happening in Silicon Valley on a scale that beggars belief.
Could that happen on a scale to affect elections, whether those be the US presidential elections or the referendum, the European referendum?
Well, anything's possible when you have algorithms that can filter out information that's not good for the agenda you have or the outcome you want, and emphasize information that does support the outcome that you want. And increasingly, it's coming to light that this is what's happening. See, when the internet started, and which came out of an organization called DARPA, by the way, which is the technological development arm of the Pentagon, it was sold as the free flow of information. You could post all kinds of opinions. Now, if that didn't start like that, and right from the start is you can't say that, you can't do that, then it wouldn't have got this massive control and influence on the communications that go on between people. So you start with what people want. And then, especially more recently, and faster, you start doing, especially when you enter the realm of semi-monopoly, you start taking away the freedom of the free flow of information. So people now are having YouTube channels just deleted. No explanation, just deleted. On a big scale when they're challenging the official narrative. Facebook censor people. They have a thing called ghost banning, where you actually get to post it, but the AI makes sure it doesn't go anywhere. And when you have the power to do that, coming back to perception, you have the power to control the information that people receive and thus massively influence the perceptions that they have. And from their perceptions comes their behavior, comes what they will accept, what they won't accept, what they'll challenge, what they won't challenge. It's an extraordinary centralization of power. And, people are saying, I love Trump, I hate Trump, and oh, it's the right, it's the left. And this vaudeville show, which it is in so many ways, is so focusing people's attention on that. It's everywhere, isn't it? Trump's everything. and people are not looking what's happening in that area of real estate in California where all this is going on.
David, good to have you here.
Good.
What about, that's where we go next, Trump, America. You were in America last week. You're filming, you're updating your documentary Renegade, which is you, which is what you are. What about President Trump? Is he a renegade?
I think he's a renegade in the eyes of many people who voted for him. And, you know, when I see what is called the progressive left attacking Trump and saying it's terrible what's happened, I say to them, look in the mirror. Because the reason that someone like Trump could come to power, the reason that these parties are coming to power in Europe, is because so many people have been left voiceless for so long. For instance, if you have what is called political correctness, and we were talking earlier about censorship and what you can hear and what you can say, political correctness is simply manipulating the population to silence itself. And more we're seeing the Orwellian destruction of free opinion and the free flow of debate on the basis of you can't say that.
Or you can't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm thinking of that actress who pulled out of the film, the transgender film. Who was it? Was it Charlize?
It was
Scarlett
Johansson.
Scarlett Johansson. I mean, a lot of public pressure there for her to do that.
Well, this is a major area of the suppression of freedom of speech and freedom of opinion. It's the mob. And when you talk, as I'm sure you do, to the general population, you find that their views of these issues are not the same as the mob. But the mob have got very organized, the Twitter stormers. And unfortunately, because so many people, particularly celebrities, are frightened of upsetting people, frightened of losing or tainting their image as they perceive it. In other words, frightened of what other people think. Again and again you see it. They're down on their knees, they're calling for the sackcloth and the ashes. I'm ever so sorry, please forgive me. And if we go on doing this, if we go on like Scarlett Johansson did, I can understand it, but to pull out, if we keep doing that, then we're handing over power over our lives and our society to the mob, the people that intimidate people into their version of everything. And this is where we are now increasingly. The only right in the eyes of these people is I am right. And because I am right, anyone else that has a different opinion to me must by definition be wrong. And if they're wrong, then their right to freedom of speech is nothing like as important as mine, because it don't matter if they have freedom of speech, because they're wrong. This is the process of thinking, or what passes for it, that is increasingly having these vociferous, loud, intimidating people impose their will on everyone else. For instance, if people have a view that you can decide your gender by just deciding it, that is an opinion. And it's opinion that the people have the right to have. But if you say, actually, I'm a man and I don't have breasts, right? And I have dangly bits, women don't. So therefore, there is something in this genetic relationship to sexuality, then that's an equally valid opinion that should be open to free debate. This is the way the mob works, however. You can say, well, yes, you just decide your gender. Fair enough, it's your opinion. You should have it. But the other opinion's not allowed.
Yeah,
and there's a simple thing, just very quickly.
A doctor last week who was
Eamonn.
sacked because scientifically he wouldn't agree to that.
Yeah.
So if you wake up and you say, well, I'm Edwina, not Eamonn, he said, like, I can't recognise that.
Yeah.
But he got sacked for not taking that into account.
Exactly. And that's how this browbeating into submission and intimidation works. And we are seeing the mob increasingly imposing its will. I mean, you know, I don't have any political sympathy with what's called the far right. But I do have sympathy with freedom of speech. And I certainly don't have sympathy with people that call themselves left, like Antifa, who go to meetings of people they disagree with and knock the crap out of them. This is the world we're moving into. It's so polarized, and it's so I am right on one side and I am right on the other.
Who's ruling?
And the truth is always in the shades of grey. That's what we miss.
Who's ruling this world that we're in? You often talk about the global elite. Has Trump joined that global elite? Is Theresa May part of that global elite? Is Angela Merkel? What's
By the time you get to that level, you're talking here today, gone tomorrow puppets, mate. And if you're going to hide what I call the permanent government, what is increasingly now in mainstream society called the deep state, then we've got to understand that the focus of attention on the here today, gone tomorrow politicians is diverting attention to where the real power is. It's not about, Trump. It's Trump now, and I love Trump. I hate Trump. He replaced Obama. Someone will replace Trump, and they come and they go. The permanent government doesn't go. At the top of the pyramid, you've got this network of people. Very few people compared with the global population. It's laughable. Then you've got the secret society network through which it manipulates, but keeping secret that this cabal exists. Under that, you've got control of finance. And note, every thing I'm mentioning doesn't come and go. It's always there. So you come through finance. And what does finance do? It dictates choice. If you say to people, what would you like to do with your life? And they say this, and I say, why aren't you doing it? They say, I ain't got the money, mate. So you control choice for the population by controlling the money. Then you come down and you hit the military. The military's always there. When you travel around America, I'm sure you've seen it too, Eamonn. There's forts everywhere. I mean, the amount of land that's occupied by the American military is staggering. And of course, it's got a budget. I think it's up to 10 countries, the 10 next countries with the biggest military budgets, before you equal the military budget of the United States. So it's fantastically funded. Along with the military, you've got the military intelligence networks and the domestic intelligence network, the CIA and British intelligence, the National Security Agency, etc. These are always there. And then you come down, you hit the corporations, you hit the justice and legal system, that's always there. And if you're going to control a society, you control the money, but you must also control the law. And then you come down after this hierarchy of permanence, and then you hit the here today, gone tomorrow politicians, where the focus of attention is always on, as if they're making the decisions. Okay. They have a saying in America, people who are awake anyway, it doesn't matter who you vote for, the government still gets in. Yeah, the permanent government still gets in. And that's what's running the show. And that's why, if you look across the presidencies and the prime ministers in different eras, the same basic agenda kicks on whoever's in power. And very quickly, if I've got time before the news.
So you haven't forgotten how it's done?
No, I'm not. Good memory. Look at democracy, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about the here today, gone tomorrow politicians. How does it work? In almost every country, there are two parties that have any chance of forming a government, sometimes three, mostly two, America, Britain, etc. So you vote for party A, and you don't like what and they get into power, you don't like what they're doing. The only way to get them out is to vote for party B. You vote for party B, they get in. You don't like what they're doing. Why? Because basically it's the same thing, because the permanent government is dictating it, not them. So how do you get rid of party B? You go back to party A, and it's this AB that we call democracy. I was in Ukraine in 2010, I think it was, and the president of Ukraine, Yanukovych, was the same man they threw out in the Orange Revolution in 2004. Because the Orange Revolution put this other man in, he took power, they didn't like what he did. And when they wanted to get rid of him, Yanukovych, who was removed in the in the so-called revolution was still leading the other party. So he gets back in. Now, this is the madness, and we call it choice.
John, David's listening.
Hello, good evening to you all.
Hello, John.
Hi.
Good afternoon, I'm confused. Good afternoon to you. What I'd like to know, David, because I'm with you on this, especially with the internet and its control, how come we can't tell people? You see, way back when I was on CB radio, you know, I was always careful. I was always told not to say too many things. How can we control this? Because I think, unfortunately, we're going to end up with a serious backlash. And I think at the end of the day, people will go back to using CB radio.
People will go back to using CB, rebelling against this, John thinks.
Well, that does happen. That kind of stuff does happen in America, where there's a lot of stations like that. But of course, they don't police the frequencies quite so much as they do in Britain, which is very much harder here. What the internet has done up to this point is to give a vehicle for alternative narratives to circulate. And like I say, what is happening now is those vehicles are being systematically removed. And you have to ask, when people say, oh, is there a conspiracy, all that stuff, well, why would giant corporations, etc., like the internet corporations, why would they want to censor people's opinions just because they're different to the mainstream narrative? There has to be a reason for it. And when you put all the other stuff together, all the deletion of channels, or the gathering of fine detail of private information, you can see Orwell's world unfolding. And by the way, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, which becomes more and more into fore, along with Orwell. Up to this point, it's been the Orwellian police state and surveillance and control. But now we're seeing the genetics, the manipulation of the human body even coming in, which is what the Brave New World and Aldous Huxley was talking about, and that came out in 1932. And you know, in my books, I quote a guy, the one before the last one called Phantom Self. I quote this guy at length, and it was in 1969. His name's Dr. Richard Day. And he was a big-time Rockefeller family insider. The Rockefellers are in this network. And no one knows why he did it, but I'm glad he did. He stood up at a meeting of pediatricians in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, because he was in the medical profession. And he asked them to turn off recording equipment, and he asked them not to take notes, because he was now going to tell them how the world was going to change, because what he represented, he was only a gopher for it, mind, was going to change it. And what he said that night in 1969 is absolutely stunning.
Which was?
In the sense of the world that we now live, in detail. And you know one of the things he said in 1969? What? We are going to make boys and girls the same.
Interesting.
And many
I saw
other
a news
things
report last night where
that are happening now.
Yeah, that they were doing that. They were taking no gender references in the classroom.
It's if people read what he said in 1969, it is a jaw dropper.
Okay.
When you look at the world today, that means very quickly that there is an agenda. It's not happening randomly.
Right. Well, let me ask you, David Icke, why are you here on this planet? Do you think? I mean, what is your mission? Are you a prophet? Are you a conspiracist? Are you a preacher? What's your job, do you think?
Well, none of the above. And by the way, you know, this term, conspiracy theorist, conspiracy theory, which is now used as a term of debunking. Oh, he's a conspiracy theorist. What's a conspiracy? What's the dictionary definition? It's two or more people conspiring to bring about an outcome. We're drowning in them on that basis. The question is, though, where did the widespread use of conspiracy theory and conspiracy theories come from?
Where?
Came from the CIA. Provable fact. During the 1960s, when people staggeringly, I mean, you know, why would they, were questioning the fact that a magic bullet had gone through several people in Kennedy's car and ended up in him, were questioning the fact that his head went back as seen on the Zapruder film taken by an onlooker, and they blame a guy who's supposed to be behind him. Do they have bullets that do U-turns, do they? So people were questioning that increasingly. And the CIA put out a document, you can still, I published it in one of my books, to the major media in America, giving a list of things to use to discredit those that were questioning the Kennedy assassination. Of course, later Martin Luther King and the others of the 60s. And among them was, use the term conspiracy theory and conspiracy theorist, because what does that do? It gives the idea that it's only theory. Now, do conspiracy theories exist? Of course, because you say, well, looking at the evidence, I think this is probably what happened. That's a theory. But if people read my books, a couple of them, one of them's 1,000 pages, one of them's not much smaller, you see enormous amounts of interconnecting evidence, not least from insiders and whistleblowers and what have you. Because once you do what I do, people are attracted to you to get the information out. You see, it's not a theory. It's backed up by substantial fact, but you can destroy all of that in one word or one phrase. He's a conspiracy theorist.
Can I ask you? You're a young lad from a council estate in Leicester.
Yeah.
How and when did you start thinking the way that you do? Because you see the world, you do see the world in a different way.
Right.
I connect with that partly. I get that because I don't like following rules. I don't like to be told what to do. I like to find an alternative way. But you've taken it to a different level.
Yeah.
How did that happen to you?
Well, you don't have to go far outside the norm to be on a different level, frankly.
But you are on a different level.
But just very quickly, we're talking about this programming of perception. Look at a human life.
When did it start with you?
I'll come to that very quickly. But this is an important point. Look at a human life. You come out of the womb and you're immediately influenced in your perceptions by your parents who've been through the process you're about to go through. Very soon, ludicrously soon, after entering this world, you find yourself sitting at a desk with an authority figure now telling you what is, what isn't, what's right, what's wrong, what's credible, what's not credible, when you can go to the toilet, when you can eat, when you can talk. And this goes on through your formative years, where the system's version of everything, what I call the postage stamp consensus, because it's so narrow, is downloaded into people. And then they go off into the institutions, they become journalists, they become scientists, they become doctors, they become politicians, they become CEOs or whatever. And they take with them that core version of normal they've been, and limitation possibility, that they have been downloading all their lives. And then the people in these institutions then confirm to each other that this norm is normal. So a journalist who's doing a story about, say, a health situation won't go to an alternative practitioner who may have had great success in it. He'll go to a doctor who'll give him postage stamp normal. So you don't have to go too far out
beyond
of the norm.
Postage stamp to be considered wacko.
Yes, exactly. And the postage stamp defends itself and protects itself because of the crime of being different, which increasingly, that's what we're seeing. Not just increasingly, it's gone on throughout known human history. Religion policed the postage stamp. Science polices the postage stamp. Politics polices the postage stamp. Now the Twitter stormers police the postage stamp. But what happened to me was I was minding my own business. I mean, as Eamonn said, I was saying, hello, good evening, here's the sport. Then during 1981, 1982, no, what was it? 1988, 89. I was a spokesman for the Green Party, and I was a presenter with the BBC, and I got this feeling increasingly through 1988 and then into 1989 when the Green Party had that massive European election success. I felt when I was in a room alone, I wasn't alone. I didn't understand it, know anything about it. And it got to the point in the spring of 1990 when I was in the Kensington Hilton Hotel working for the BBC. And I just finished working, and I came back to the room, and I sat on the side of the bed. And I looked out into the room, and the fact that there was some presence there I didn't understand was so tangible by now. I actually said into the room, if there's something there, would you please contact me, because drive me up the wall. About maybe a week later, 2 weeks later, I was with my son, Gareth, little boy then, and he went into a newsagent's shop, to cut a long story short, He was looking at the books, and I went in after him. It was at Ryde on the Isle of Wight. The shop's still there. And I said to him, "Come on, Gaz, we'll go up in the town and get some lunch." And as I turned, my feet wouldn't move, and I felt, I know what it was now, it was an electromagnetic field, but a very strange atmosphere was around me. And I wouldn't say, it wasn't a voice, it was a very strong thought form, right? It said, "Go and look at the books on the far side." Now, I knew that shop very well. I went to often, and the books on the far side were Mills and Boon and Barbara Cartland. What the heck am I going over there for? So anyway, I start walking in that direction in total bewilderment. And in among these books of, Barbara Cartland, etc., was this one which was called Mind to Mind, and there's a woman face on the front. And because it was different to the rest, I picked it up, looked at the blurb, and I saw the word psychic. And it was the autobiography of this psychic and how she works. And I thought immediately, I wondered if she'll know or pick up what the hell's happening to me in this last year. So I didn't tell her anything. I said to her, I've got arthritis, maybe your hands-on healing might help, and nothing about what was going on. And when I went to see her, nothing happened the first time, but the second and third times, the atmosphere in the room dramatically changed, and I felt this like spider's web on my face suddenly while she's doing the hands-on healing stuff, which is just an exchange of energy. And of course, my backside's now slipping down the bench now, because I'm thinking, I read about this in her book, that you can feel a spider's web like on your face, which I now know, again, is an electromagnetic field. And about 10 to 15 seconds after I felt this, never said anything to her, she launches her head back and says, "This is powerful. I'm going to have to close my eyes for this one." And my bum's going more and more down the bench now because this is all new to me. And in the next 10 minutes, and again a week later, that was the last time I went, she was telling me that she was being told to tell me that I was going to go out on a world stage and reveal great secrets. One man cannot change the world, but one man can communicate the message that can change the world. That I was going to face enormous opposition and ridicule and stuff, but they, whoever they are, will always be there to protect me. Now, I came out of that, not exactly neutral, but we'll see what happens. But what has happened since, all that she told me, and more, has unfolded in the most synchronistic way, like some force. I've been walking through a maze, and some force has been opening and shutting the doors to send me down the channels. And right to this day, that's how it's come about. If I'd have done this just by trying to work it out, no chance. But because of the synchronicity of the information coming to me, I've been able to put this stuff together.
I've got to go to the break, but can you tell me in 15 seconds who they were, who would always be there?
No idea. I've always just gone with my intuition. Does this feel right, or doesn't it feel right? And that
is they a god? Is they religious?
No, it's not. No, it's not.
It's an energy force.
It's a form of consciousness. It's not some bloke with a beard sitting on a throne. I mean, that whole religious
what
thing.
we're fed.
Yeah, what we're fed. It's consciousness, and we are a point of attention within an infinite consciousness. This is why racism and self-identity with labels of race and religion, etc., is so ridiculous. It divides and rules us. They are just experiences for our point of attention, awareness to experience.
Love him or loathe him, agree or disagree with him, David Icke does his research. He knows what he's talking about. He believes what he's talking about. Whether you believe it is another thing. And actually, David, you're getting a lot of interesting complimentary texts and tweets coming in about you. People certainly enjoy listening to you. Whether they agree or not is a different thing. And what you do, and I know you talk about this, is you join up the dots.
Right,
you do your research and you look at links that either the rest of us don't do or people don't want us to think about.
That's the point. If you look at things in and of themselves, world events, people, corporations, whatever, they look a certain way. See the connections between them. You stop seeing pixels, you start seeing pictures, and then the world opens up.
Right. It's opening up in all sorts of ways. Artificial intelligence being the latest thing we're hearing or talking about. Are you worried about that? Should we be threatened by that?
I've written extensively about this because it's the end game. Up to this point, human perception, which otherwise human control by controlling human perception, has been done by controlling information that people receive. the AI endgame, which they're openly talking about in Silicon Valley, people like the Google executive Ray Kurzweil openly. This is why so many people recently have come out and said, hold on, where are we going? About connecting the human brain or the human body thinking processes, the human mind, to AI. And what Kurzweil says is that after this connection, which he's talking about 2030, that's what he's given. I'm talking in 2018, that once the connection's made, the AI will do more and more and more of human thinking until human thinking and that human consciousness, as we would conceive it, is in his words, negligible. Now, if you are controlling AI, you are turning people into basically a computer terminal on the AI internet. And what's happening, bringing it to topical everyday today situations, is people are being manipulated through something that I call the totalitarian tiptoe. You know you're going to Z, but if you go in too big a leap to Z, then people are going to say, what's happening? Because the change is so great. So you go as fast as you can from A to C to E to whatever. And every step is presented as in and of itself and not connected to the other steps. But if you break it down and you connect them, look what's happening. Stage one, you get people, particularly the young, because they're the adults in the world that at the time this is supposed to come in. You get them addicted to technology that they holdables. You then, because you want to get in the body, you then go on the body. You do your Google Glass, you do your Apple Watch, you do your Bluetooth. And now, next, and it's happening now, you go in the body with microchips. And not only microchips that you can see, but nano microchips, which a CIA scientist told me in the late 90s was coming, which I put in my books at the time. And people said, that's ridiculous. Breathing in microchips, that's impossible. It's not with nanotechnology, it's not. Exactly what he told me is happening. And the idea, which is what we're being manipulated as a global society to do, is to connect our thinking and emotional processes to AI, so the human mind becomes AI. It's basically an
Westworld.
Well, this is the point. This is an important point. There is a method of perceptual programming that actually has a name. It's called what's it called? Basically, it's programming an understanding or an awareness of something before it actually happens. And what happens is you put out in movies and television programs the world you want to go into, because if you don't, the division between what people are living and where you're going is so great that that division, that chasm, will get people to say what's going on. So what you do, it's called Pre-Emptive Programming, that's what it's called. And what you do is you put out all these programs. Look at the AI programs and the Westworlds and the synthetic humans now. And you're basically getting people subconsciously familiar with where you want to take them, so that you're lessening the resistance. This is where we're going, and this is the big end game that we must understand.
And the end game of all end games, in 30 years from now, I'm just looking at your Twitter page, you say humans will attend their own funerals as robots.
That's not me saying that. That is AI, what they call themselves AI experts and what are called futurists. That's what they're saying, because this is the idea, is to download. I mean, this sounds fantastic, but this is actually where it's going, and that's what that guy's talking about. Downloading human consciousness onto a digital form, so humans become digital rather than biological. I mean, you couldn't think of something more far out, except that that's what's happening, and that in the way that he wrote is what Aldous Huxley was talking about in Brave New World, the time when there were no longer humans, not even human procreation, not even male or female, but a very different type of human, and all, this explosion of transgender, which is fusing the perception of sexuality that is taking us down the totalitarian tiptoe to this world that I'm talking about.
Well, David Icke, you are certainly a very different type of human. Long may you continue to tease us, perplex us, educate us, inspire us, infuriate us, whatever you've done. You've done it very well for the past hour. Really appreciate it.
That's very kind. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you
David.
very much indeed.